Hi, I'm Dr. Saqib Mansoor, and this is my next lecture on the neuroanatomy from my channel Learning Anatomy. So today's topic is midbrain. We will start a discussion of brainstem, and we have covered first of all the medulla oblongata, and then the pons, and today's topic is the midbrain. So we'll do midbrain from various headings. Like first of all, we will study its developmental aspects, then its layout and its overview and its functions, what the important functions it observes, and its areas. What is various areas present in that. And divisions into various areas, and then its external features and then its internal features with the cross sections be two levels, and then upper level and then lower level, and then the applied aspect, the clinical aspects, the clinical anatomy. So it's a sort of complete discussion of the midbrain. So this is the developmental aspect that we know already that there are various, um, vesicles in the brain when the development of the nervous system takes place, that the brain vesicle divides into three primary vesicles, which is the forebrains, the prosencephalon, and the midbrain, the mesencephalon, and the hindbrain, which is the rhombencephalon. So these three are the primary brain vesicles, and they have a wall, right? And the cavity corresponding each and every these three parts, right? And these three primary vesicles divide into five secondary vesicles, like the forebrain or prosencephalon divides into telencephalon and diencephalon. And telencephalon, and here it goes, and in its adult derivative, this forms the cerebral hemispheres, and the cavity is the lateral ventricle. This would be the lateral ventricle, and the solid wall would be the cerebral hemisphere. So this is the one secondary vesicle, the telencephalon. Then is the diencephalon, right? So this would be the thalami, the subthalami, hypothalamus, etc. And their cavity is the third ventricle, which is over here, right? And this is a prosencephalon or forebrain dividing into telencephalon and diencephalon. So the giving rise to the cerebral hemispheres, and this diencephalon giving rise to thalamus, hypothalamus, subthalamus, epithalamus, etc. Then is this mesencephalon or midbrain. That is only one secondary vesicle, the mesencephalon itself, and this gives rise to midbrain. Its cavity is the one of the narrowest part of this ventricular system. These cavities, of course, form the ventricular system, which is the aqueduct. So this is the aqueduct, very narrow part. This connects this third ventricle with the lowermost with the fourth ventricle. So then coming to the hindbrain or the rhombencephalon, it divides into metencephalon and myelencephalon. These two are the secondary vesicles, and metencephalon it then divides into pons and cerebellum, and myelencephalon divides into medulla oblongata. So this is various parts, and pons, the cavity is called as the upper part of the fourth ventricle, and the medulla cavity is the lower part of the fourth ventricle. So this is just wanted to, this embryology just want to say how these various parts of the brain are emerging from this primary vesicle. That means the brain vesicle. So this is again a general structure of the brain, the cross section, and this is today's topic, the midbrain. So this is the whole brainstem. We studied the medulla oblongata, the pons, and this is the midbrain. Right? You see, this is the midbrain. This connects this pons and the cerebellum with the forebrain. This is the this anatomical layout of the midbrain. So it measures about 2 centimeter approximately, and it passes through an opening in the tentorium cerebelli. So it is inclined anteriorly. So its narrow channel is the cerebral aqueduct. I've already told you, which is filled with CSF. Blockage of the cerebral aqueduct is the aqueductal stenosis, and it causes the a blockage of the cerebral aqueductal stenosis causes hydrocephalus. Then this is a overview that it mediates visual and auditory reflexes. We will get into the detail in a short while, visual reflexes and auditory reflexes. So, of course, I told you that already in the previous discussions of the medulla and the Pons, with the links to those videos are given below in the description, that out of the 12 cranial nerves, these 10 cranial nerves are connected with the brain stem that takes origin from there, attached there. Like to the medulla oblongata, the lower 5 cranial nerves are attached to this medulla. Which of those 4? It's the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th cranial nerves. And to the Pons are attached the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th cranial nerves. And to this midbrain, our today's topic, we have the 2 cranial nerves, which is the 3rd and the 4th. At the upper level is oculomotor nerve, and at the lower level is a trochlear nerve. So these are the 2 nerves related with this midbrain or mesencephalon. So that is one point, and it contains a very large motor nucleus, one of the the largest nucleus of the midbrain, the substantia nigra. Of course, nigra means black substance. So, which is due to the presence of the melanin pigment in its cytoplasm. Degeneration of the extrapyramidal motor nucleus causes Parkinson disease. So this Parkinson disease, as its one cause, is this degeneration of the extrapyramidal motor nucleus here in the substantia nigra. This is one cause. There are very other causes of the Parkinson disease. So this is the presence of the reticular formation also here. I told you already that the reticular formation present throughout the brainstem, and so rather less is present in this midbrain. It is concerned with this reticular formation, is concerned with awakening. So that is the point, the consciousness. And if it is a lesion in that, it will result in coma. So the extension of this over midbrain is, it extends from the superior medullary vellum to the posterior commissure. So of course now it's very interesting, it's 3 parts. What are those? Tectum, tegmentum, and the base. So the base is pedunculi. So let's see what are these parts. You can see in this beautiful picture. Here you first identify, this is the cerebral aqueduct, right, for the CSF, which connects the 3rd and 4th ventricles. And here you see this part is the tectum, the part of the midbrain posterior to the cerebral aqueduct is the tectum. It's very simple. The part of the midbrain posterior to the cerebral aqueduct is tectum, which tectum contains superior colliculus and inferior colliculus. Superior and inferior colliculi. We'll talk about them very soon. And what is present anterior to this tectum is the tegmentum, right? So this is the tegmentum anterior to this tectum and posterior to this crura, which is basically substantia nigra over here, right? I told you this is the largest nucleus of the midbrain is the substantia nigra over here. These the substantia nigra, this, and this part is the tegmentum, which contains basically this, where you can say the sensory fiber, sensory tracts, and we'll discuss it very soon. And this is the tegmentum, and there is a part, see, cross cerebri. The 2 are called crura. So what is crus cerebri? This is the part of the midbrain anterior to this tegmentum, the substantia nigra, and contains the motor tracts. Which are those? This is the medial most is the frontopontine fibers, and then lateral to that are the, in the middle they are the corticospinal and corticonuclear fibers, and lateral most are the temporopontine fibers. These are the fibers present in this crura. So this is the three parts of that. So you see, you can see there, I told you already, tectum. These includes the superior and inferior colliculi, and the tegmentum contains the sensory pathways and the cranial nerve nuclei. You see this. This is the level of the transverse section of the midbrain at the level of the inferior colliculus, and at the level of the inferior colliculus we have this trochlear nucleus. So the nuclei corresponding cranial nerve and this motor, this sensory tracts are present in the tegmentum, which the sensory tracts are the lemnisci. With the four lemnisci present at the level of the inferior colliculus. We will discuss in detail in a sequence very soon. So this is the structure, and then there's a crura I told you, and that's the word cerebral peduncle. What is that? You see this cerebral peduncle. So tegmentum and these crura, crus cerebri, they together form the cerebral peduncle. This is the cerebral peduncle. Then is an area, pretectum, which is the pretectal area located between the superior colliculus and the habenular trigone. This is pretectum. As we move on, and let's have this external feature study. What we studied so far, the developmental aspects in a very brief overall, just I'm in a synopsis or a concept, and then we go on to the overview, studying the structures present in that, and the functions like the auditory and the visual reflexes, very important auditory visual reflexes in the midbrain, and its various parts, tectum, tegmentum, and the crura, and the formation of the cerebral peduncles, and the presence of the substantia nigra over here. These are the external features, very briefly. So external feature, first of all, in an anterior view. This is the midbrain in an anterior view. This should see, this is the midbrain, right? This was the pons, and above to that is the our midbrain. You see, these are the crura, right? I told you their structure. Four fibers present in that. The crura, crus cerebri of midbrain. These two crura, and medial to the crura emerge the oculomotor nerves. The medial to this crura emerge the oculomotor nerves, and in between these crura, this area present is the interpeduncular fossa. These are the cerebral peduncles, right? Crus cerebri means they are the cerebral peduncles, crus cerebri of the midbrain. Between the peduncles are the this is the interpeduncular fossa. Basically, it's not part of the midbrain, I tell you. So it contains what? It contains posterior perforated substance, and its content is also the oculomotor nerve, the contents of the posterior perforated substance, and what? The circle of Willis, right? It is perforated due to the presence of various vessels which perforate the substance present over here. So the look is that of a perforated substance. So this is the discussion of the posterior perforated substance, interpeduncular fossa, and these are the crura anteriorly visible and this oculomotor nerve. So I don't think this is any point to discuss the small fibers or various vessels over here which are lying. The vessel will study with the vascular system and the blood supply of the various parts of the brain in a separate topic. So it's pointless to discuss that over here and wasting time. Now let's see, that was we studied the anterior aspect, external features, And very briefly, the brainstem in an dorsal or posterior surface, right? You see, so posterior surface, you have a structure, these superior colliculus, superior colliculi two, and inferior colliculi. These are the eminences posteriorly, four eminences present posteriorly, right? And they are collectively called as corpora quadrigemina. Corpora quadrigemina, which are four elevations are separated into various parts of the colliculi by a vertical groove and a horizontal groove. Vertical groove and horizontal groove. This is why this divide into this superior colliculus on both right and left part, and this inferior colliculus on right and left parts. And very interesting, you see there is a trochlear nerve. So out of the all 12 cranial nerve, the trochlear nerve is the only one that emerges posteriorly. So this is the point, right? So this is present below the inferior colliculus, trochlear nerve. So this is salient features present dorsally on the level of the midbrain. So this is the lateral view. What I want to show you here and discuss is that it's very important, right? This is Pons, this is Medulla, and you see this is the structures of the midbrain. And what I want to highlight is that this is the inferior colliculus. We've studied this is the, by just to see the pointer, inferior colliculus. Then a structure, inferior brachium, inferior brachium. This is inferior brachium. So this inferior colliculus is connected via this inferior brachium to this medial geniculate body. So these are the three structures: the inferior colliculus, then this inferior brachium, and going into the medial geniculate body. Then I tell you this inferior colliculus is having the center for auditory reflexes, the auditory, you say, activity, the auditory center is involved in this inferior colliculus. So this is the point, and this goes to the inferior brachium and the medial geniculate body. You can, I can give you a mnemonic that this is the inferior colliculus concerned with our auditory responses, the auditory center present over here, and the lateral lemniscus involved, right? And you remember this medial geniculate body M. You know M for music, for listening. So this is the auditory center with the inferior colliculus, right? This is the memory aid in the form of a mnemonic. Then I move to the superior colliculus. You see this superior colliculus, and this is, it is connected with the superior brachium, and via the superior brachium, this inferior colliculus is connected to the lateral geniculate body, which is then connected to this optic tract, and there forms a optic radiation. So this is the, of course, this is the optic tract and optic radiation. So this our superior colliculus is concerned with visual reflexes, and from here you remember L, lateral geniculate body, L is for light. So light means visual reflexes. Another memory aid that in an anatomical position of the body, which is lying superior and which is lying inferior. The eyes are superior or the ear are superior. Of course, eyes are superior and the ear are little bit below. So eyes are superior, the superior colliculus, and ear are inferior, the inferior colliculus. So ear and inferior colliculus, ear, auditory center, and the eyes are superior and the superior colliculus, and this is the auditory, it is a visual reflexes. And the L, lateral, light with the visual reflexes, and inferior colliculus with the medial geniculate body, M for music. So this is the elaboration for you. Then another word that You see this, we have the cerebellar peduncles, three of them. So this midbrain is connected with the cerebellum via the superior cerebellar peduncle. Here you can see, this is the superior cerebellar peduncle. It connects this midbrain with the cerebellum. This is the cerebellum. This is cerebellum, and this. So this I already told you, discussed with you, right? Then we will move to the sections. So then I'm so done with the briefly with the discussion of the external features. And now in the last about this gross anatomy, before moving to the clinical anatomy, we will study the transverse sections. Very important. Transverse sections of midbrain. Two level of the inferior colliculi. So of course, you see this cross section. It's very simple to draw and memorize, and we will do it under various headings. That there's a cavity at the both levels, inferior colliculus. Then the other section is the superior colliculus, and the cavity is same, which is the cerebral aqueduct. And then the gray matter and the white matter. Yes, you can say that. And white matter could be definitely would be motor and sensory. That is it. So let's study the gray matter. So you see what are there. First of all, as this is the inferior colliculus level, first gray matter is the inferior colliculus nucleus itself. It's a large gray nucleus, gray matter. So this is this eminence or projection, the inferior colliculus contains this nucleus, the inferior colliculus, right? And as you see behind this, this would be the periaqueductal gray matter. This is the periaqueductal gray matter, where this my red marker is, red pointer is moving, periaqueductal gray matter. And behind, posterior to that, rather interior to that, is a trochlear nucleus. You can see this is the trochlear nucleus. So this is the fourth cranial nerve. This is lying anterior to this periaqueductal gray matter and posterior to this medial longitudinal fasciculus. So this is another gray matter present over here. And then we see and move on, and we see that what structure present over here. This is the substantia nigra. This is gray matter. This is the substantia nigra, and that you always remember that's the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve present over here. Mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, right? This is another gray matter. So this is the simple, very easy to remember. This is again repeat all. This is the inferior colliculus, one. Then you see mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, two. Then is trochlear nerve nucleus, three. And the fourth, you can say this is the is over this substantia nigra. You can see from here, inferior colliculus, substantia nigra, trochlear nucleus, and the mesencephalic nucleus of the cranial nerve, five, right? And a few word about this mesencephalic nucleus is that is this long nucleus extending from the upper spinal level to the medulla, to the pons, and up till this our midbrain. So this is the present, at least you can see this is present throughout the brainstem, the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. This is the thing. So as then we move to the white matter, it would be the sensory tracts and the motor tracts. So what are the sensory tracts of the fiber? There will be the lemnisca. At the level of the inferior colliculus, we have the four lemnisci. What are they? I told you already a mnemonic. My tongue speaks louder. My M for medial lemniscus. Tongue, T for trigeminal lemniscus. Speaks, and sir, it's for spinal lemniscus. Louder, L for lateral lemniscus. So remember, very important, lateral lemniscus terminates and ends at this inferior colliculus. lateral lemniscus ends. So there are the 4 lemnisci at inferior colliculus, but at the superior colliculus there are the only 3 these sensory lemnisci. The lateral lemniscus end over here. So this is important point. And then you see the motor fibers. First of all, this is very big. These are the crura, and you see over here the medial most of the frontopontine fiber, and in the middle there are the corticospinal and the corticonuclear fibers, and then other temporopontine fibers laterally. This is the point. And then this medial longitudinal fasciculus is a motor fibers, right? So these are the motor tracts, and then the sensory tracts at this level. And this is the point. So again, you can say this is the inferior colliculus, which forms part of the auditory pathway. I have already discussed with that. This is the substantia nigra, so contains melanin. And this substantia nigra concerned with muscle tone connected to the spinal cord, cerebral cortex, hypothalamus, and basal nuclei. The crura, I already told you, motor tracts are present, and they are the descending tracts. So they are separated from the tegmentum by the substantia nigra. So that is the point. So that finishes with the level, the cross section at the level of the inferior colliculus. And then we move to the transverse section of the midbrain at the level of the superior colliculi. It will be containing a very important structure other than the other structures discussed previously. This is the red nucleus. So often somebody asks you, so what is the transverse section of the midbrain at the level of the red nucleus? So do remember, it is present at the rostral level, the upper level of the midbrain, which is the superior colliculus, right? So this is, you remember, very important, red nucleus. The red color is due to the, because it's very vascular and it contains a lot of blood vessels and a heme containing, the blood containing pigment. So this is why this is red. So we'll discuss its afferents and efferents very shortly. So again, similarly, very easy to study that the gray matter, white matter, cavity, and the sensory and motor tracts, right? So this is the gray matter. That first of all will be the superior colliculus nuclei. First of all, so first is the superior colliculus. Then is the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. Then the third one is this oculomotor nerve nucleus, right? This is the oculomotor nucleus. This is present anterior to this periaqueductal gray matter. This is the periaqueductal gray matter likewise. And this is the oculomotor nerve. And this is posterior to this medial longitudinal fasciculus, right? So this is, one is the superior colliculus, gray matter, then is the mesencephalic nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and then this is oculomotor nerve nucleus, and you could see substantia nigra. This is the substantia nigra. So you could see superior colliculus, substantia nigra, and oculomotor nucleus, and then is all Adinger-Westphal nucleus, parasympathetic nucleus, largest one of that, Adinger-Westphal nucleus, not labeled in that diagrams. So you see, and then we move to the sensory or the motor pathways. So you see there's the lemnisci. The lemnisci formed this band, the curved band in both sections, the curved band. So here there is no lateral lemniscus, only 3 lemnisci are present, the spinal, trigeminal, and the fourth one would be the lateral spine. You know there are 4 lemnisci, lateral finishes in the inferior colliculus level, and rest of the 3 over present over here: medial lemniscus, trigeminal lemniscus, and the spinal lemniscus, right? These are the 3 lemnisci are the sensory fibers present over here. So this is the sensory fibers, and you could see this is the medial longitudinal fasciculus. Here you could see medial longitudinal fasciculus, and that would be the motor tract, and then the sensory tract. These lemnisci and decussation of the superior cerebellar peduncle, which is very important. And this was at the inferior colliculus level. And we're studying the superior colliculus. This is the motor tracts, and these are the spinal sensory tracts. The sensory are only this lemnisci, and the motor are these. First of all, you see these are the fibers, the frontopontine fibers, corticospinal and nuclear fibers, and this temporopontine fibers. And then are the medial longitudinal fasciculus and decussation of the rubrospinal tract. Here you could see rubrospinal tract. Yes, this is the decussation of the rubrospinal tract. So this is the points. This is see a brief discussion of what are present over here. So you can compare these two. This is a superior colliculus. Here is the present decussation of the rubrospinal tract, and this section was our. This is at the level of the inferior colliculus. I told you all this. Here you could see decussation of the superior cerebellar peduncles. Over here, decussation of the superior cerebellar peduncle. Couldn't mention before, so you see this decussation of the superior cerebellar peduncle. So that's end this cross section discussion. And of course, this is the superior colliculus level, visual reflexes. I explained you already connection with the lateral geniculate body. So the efferent fibers from the tectospinal and the tectobulbar tracts, and that may be responsible for the reflex movements of the head, neck, eyes in response to visual stimuli. And then the afferent pathway for the light reflex ends in the pretectal nucleus. This is a small group of cells lying near the lateral part of the superior colliculus. And then we go on to this fibers that relay in the, which fibers? These afferent fibers relay in the pretectal nucleus and then pass to the parasympathetic nucleus of the third cranial nerve. The Adinger-Westphal nucleus is that. Fibers which emerge pass to the third nerve. So lemnisci, I told you. And this is a few words, very important. Red nucleus, you should know what is that. It's a rounded mass of gray matter between the cerebral aqueduct and the substantia nigra. Afferent and efferents. What are the afferents? Fibers coming towards that are the cerebral cortex, sorry, the afferent fibers. So of course, these are the fibers which are coming towards this red nucleus. Afferent fibers coming towards this red nucleus. They are the cerebral cortex, the corticospinal, the cerebellum, the superior cerebellar peduncle, the spinal cord, lentiform nucleus, sympathetic and subthalamic and hypothalamic nuclei, and the substantia nigra. And the efferent of red nucleus, these are the fibers which are going away from this red nucleus, are the spinal cord, rubrospinal tract, and the reticular formation, rubroreticular tract, and the substantia nigra and the thalamus. And the blood supply is very simple: posterior cerebral, superior cerebellar, and basilar arteries. Few words about the clinical anatomy and diseases. Very important to be heading we study tumor and the infarcts, the vascular lesions. Infarcts will be the vascular lesion. After there can be trauma, of course, various parts of the brain, move at a different velocity when there is some injury, like there is these midbrain is sense through an opening in the tentorium cerebri. So when it moves, there are tentorium cerebri edges are very short, and it can be subject to trauma when the head is having an injury where it moves at a faster rate. So then can be tumor present and the vascular lesion of the infarcts. So you could see here the tumor. It's the tumor of the midbrain. It blocks the aqueduct. It blocks the aqueduct, and it causes, of course, the blockage of this aqueduct and results into hydrocephalus. Then the vascular lesion, the two, Weber and the Benedikt syndrome. This is the Weber syndrome, right? This is the lesion of this area, which is what? This is which nerve? Oculomotor nerve. And this is the area. This is some motor fibers. And this main feature is the alternating or the superior oculomotor hemiplegia or the Weber syndrome. It is commonly produced by occlusion of a branch of the posterior cerebral artery that supplies the midbrain, resulting in the necrosis of brain tissue involving the oculomotor nerve and the crus cerebri. There is ipsilateral ophthalmoplegia and contralateral paralysis of the lower part of the face, tongue, and the arm and leg. The eyeball is deviated laterally because of the paralysis of the medial rectus muscle. There is drooping of the upper lid, that is called ptosis, and the pupil is dilated, mid-races, and fixed to the light and accommodation. Then this you could see this is a Weber syndrome. This area is paralyzed. This is the posterior cerebral artery. And then the Benedikt syndrome, which is involving this red nucleus and these area of the lemnisci. So that, what is that? The necrosis involves the medial lemniscus and the red nucleus, produces contralateral hemianesthesia and involuntary movements of the limbs of the opposite side. You could see it already showed you. Thank you very much for being with me and listening. And we'll continue the journey of our lectures and regularly uploading the various videos for you. Thank you very much. So please subscribe my channel for latest update videos. And we update every week, 2 videos a week at least, head and neck and this neuroanatomy these days. So till the next video, I say you goodbye.